Hi folks, Alec Anderson here, Fat Egg, talking to you at, what time is it? It's tea time, let's call it tea time, on Tuesday, the 3rd of October 2023. I haven't spoken to you since Friday, since before the weekend just gone, and obviously there's only one thing to talk about right now, and that is Susie and the Banshees, one of my favourite groups of all time. The Scream, I've got that in cassette somewhere, that's a fantastic album. There's also Juju, that's probably maybe their best actually. I thought Night Shift, song of this, is one of my favourite songs of all time. I'd listened to it endlessly until I found out what it was actually all about. Susie and the Banshees, they're not just pretending to be dark. That is some dark shit. And I don't know if you remember, I don't remember it myself, I can barely remember. I think it's maybe kind of 1977 that most of my memories start. So the Bill Grundy show where the Sex Pistols come on and they famously were really foul-mouthed to this old BBC journalist Bill Grundy. It was at ITV, I can't remember. It was some regional programme anyway. And the Sex Pistols were on that just as they were starting out in their career. And they were followed around, the Sex Pistols, by the Bromley contingent, featuring one Susie Sue. Susie and the Banshees, the first ever gig was the 100 Club in London. Was it 76 or 77? I can't really remember. You can look it up on Wikipedia anyway. And it was Marco Perrone from Adam and the Ants. Later, a chubby guitarist for Adam and the Ants. Obviously had a lot of empathy with that guy. He was guitar, and Sid Vicious, later infamously of the Sex Pistols, he was on drums, and it was Susie Sue just basically ripping off the Lord's Prayer. She just kind of did something that was avant-garde, very kind of, it was about the punk ethic, the punk spirit, rather than, actually being able to perform or whatever. And Steve Severin would be on bass. He was another member of the Bromley contingent. These punters, these young kids from the Bromley area who loved the whole punk thing and became the entourage of the Sex Pistols. It's Susie Sue who's in the background in that Bill Grundy show, when Bill Grundy kind of starts on and he says something to her that sounds a bit lewd, and that then I think it's Steve Jones or Glenn Matlock, I think it's Steve Jones that starts giving it, "You dirty old man, you dirty fucker, you dirty old bastard." So it's Susie Sue that Bill Grundy starts on that really takes that infamous episode of a programme that I only know, a journalist, unfortunately, I only know him through that through that infamous episode with the Sex Pistols. And Susie Sue, the Bromley contingent at that point in time, were known for wearing Nazi paraphernalia, swastikas, because they were so anti-establishment, coming from this little kind of middle class area of London, of the outskirts of London. Sid Vicious, I remember, it's one of the only times my mum and dad quite chilled out, and one of the only times they ever told me, no, that's a no-no, was it's an even more deeply disturbing film, a documentary. It was a bio of Sid Vicious, who was obviously a deeply disturbed young man, didn't last very long on this planet, who went around, I'm sure it was a Jewish quarter in Paris, around in there looking for people who'd actually survived the Holocaust, and was showing them bloody swastikas, not wearing a swastika, thinking this was great, genuinely upsetting people. It was unbelievably disturbing. And I was just a kid at the time. I was like, 9 or 10 or something. I was thinking, oh my God, he's upsetting old folk. And my dad just being like, no, that's beyond the pale. That's no cool. We're not talking, Elvis Presley wiggling his hips on television here. This is just something completely sinister, as it was on Saturday when some stupid arseholes up the back of the Brimlin, ICF apparently, they unveiled some stupid flag with a Nazi, a Totenkopf death's head symbol on it, kind of glorifying the SS and the Nazis, and just stuff they obviously don't understand, and doing it on, it's bad enough anytime, but doing it on Armed Services Day at Ibrox, and looking after the services. We're trying to pay tribute to the services who actually fought the Nazis, who actually know what the SS and all that kind of stuff are really all about, total scum. And these idiots are up the back with this flag, which genuinely I never noticed. I'm up the back of the main stand, and I've a bit of a great view of that part of the ground, but it wasn't a particularly big flag. And of course this has led to this whole nonsense on social media where we're all Nazis, we're all the haters of Rangers, people who don't like Rangers, are just quite happy to tar us all with the same brush, which is, of course, is complete bullshit, because they're also giving us a hard time for wearing the poppy, which, amongst all the other things, the poppy is commemorating or testifying to or paying tribute to as the people who defeated the Nazis during the Second World War. So that was awful, and it just had this twisted way of making me think, the Bromley contingent, and Michael Beale is from Bromley. Michael Beale's from Bromley, and Michael Beale with his little contingent, just over 24 hours after that game against Aberdeen on Saturday, Michael Beale, Neil Banfield, Harry Watling, Damien Matthews and Jack Aid, all these coaches were sacked by Rangers. It is all over. The Michael Beale era at Rangers is over after 10 months and a few days. 10 months and loose change. Absolutely unbelievable. And I'm just here to check in with you, see how you're doing. And like any Rangers fan right now who inquires after your health, he's only doing it so he can then unload on you about how he's feeling, how he or she is doing, how he, she or they are actually getting on right now, because as Rangers supporters, it's been quite a not even 24 hours, not even 48 hours, since Michael Beale actually was sacked. It's been something to digest, and I'm weird. That intro to this wee video will tell you that I'm weird, if nothing else has already. But I feel weird, and that the only word I can come up with since the sacking of Beale to explain how I'm feeling is flabbergasted, which is, there was nothing in any way shocking about his sacking. And myself on Saturday, I did a wee post-match reaction pod for Jersnet, and I was just basically saying that's it, he's done, he's gone. And this was no fantastic prediction. This was not a bold prediction by your bold fat host here. It was just a fact. It was in the air. It was knowledge that Michael Beale had just had his last game in charge of Rangers. I was at half-time in that game, after Rangers had controlled the first 34 minutes of the game. Aberdeen finally get a corner. They break up the park, they get a corner, they score from it, and you're kind of thinking, that's it, game over. And at half-time, 3 of the stands, at least at Ibrox, I saw season ticket holders, so you'll probably know yourself, everybody's just chatting. Everybody knows everybody, and they're chatting away, and we're just all rabidly going on about everything that had gone wrong, and why is this guy playing there, and why is this guy no fit, and what the tactics was it he's trying to achieve, blah blah blah. And that was the last hurrah. That was the last spark of Michael Beale's reign having any life about it. Aberdeen came out, scored the second goal, after Rangers had kind of floundered about for the first, was it 20 minutes or something in the second half. Aberdeen anyway made it 2-0, and that was it. Everybody just sat back in their seats and it was almost like it was like a kid's birthday party. We were all these kind of toddlers who had too much coke and too much cake and had been going off a nut at half time, and then suddenly it hit us and we were just, boom, needing more beds. And we sat there just talking about who do you want in as a replacement, who are you going to get to replace a guy who was still walking about in the technical area down below us, right in front of us. Because it was just knowledge, he had to go. Now, the booing and all that at the end, it was toxic and it was awful. It was the worst ever case of the players taking a barracking from the fans. And those players, including the captain, James Tavernier, and a lot more respect for John Lundstrom as well at that point. He's going about visibly apologising, trying to think up. The players are trying to think up, what is the sign for apologising? What do you do? How do you indicate that to the fans? Because I'm not getting any closer to them than I already am. They're trying to judge between winding the fans up, but also not being seen to run down the tunnel and try and escape from it, which a few of the players did. But James Tavernier certainly wasn't one of them. And even when the Union Bears turned up, even the Union Bears are turning on them, it's a bad state of affairs. And to be fair, it's not the players' fault, really. Not a lot of them, anyway. It was awful, it was terrible, but more generally than that, I think it's just an air of resignation, no pun intended. It turned into a sacking rather than a resignation, but there's just an air of that, it's done. I was at the back of the Copeland doing this silly little reaction pod, just a silly little pod I'm doing just now, out the back of the Copeland after the game, and I saw Michael Beale getting into his car, he's leaving, and there was a kind of half-hearted attempt to barrack him. That little bit out the back of the Copeland now where they have that temporary fencing that goes up so the players can come out that way into the temporary car park they've got. It's at the back of where, it's just right in front of where the old Edmiston house was, that kind of subterranean bit you go down to get your tickets. The ticket office used to be in there. When you were down there, getting your ticket, eye level would be the car park at which the players are now. parking their fancy cars, and there's kind of mesh fencing round about that, and there was a little, as Beale come down that little walkway, which is all players, and still getting accosted by wee kids with their parents are wanting their autographs, even in the middle of all this. But that lets the players delay just enough for the more excitable kind of teenagers or the drunker older fans to have a go at them, to stuff. Well, there's kids in that there. It's not right, but it's just the way things are. I'm not blaming anybody. The club means a hell of a lot to us, and we can get a bit overexcitable about it because we're just frustrated. But there was a couple of guys that are having a go at Michael Beale as he comes out. He emerged and he's stuck between. Even I'm watching him from behind, and you can tell the demeanour, the atmosphere, the vibe coming off him as one of, I don't want to be ignoring these people. I don't want to seem rude, but it's actually at the point where for me to delay and try and talk to anybody could be seen as inciting the crowd, as little as it was, as small as that crowd was. So he gets down there and he gets in his car, and there's people kind of coming up to the other side of this temporary fencing, going, "Oh, Beale, you can," and the stewards are on the other side of it, and they're kind of walking down and going, "Well, no, really, nothing's going to happen here, is it?" And the people are kind of going, "No, but it could." Well, I've got to say it could because I'm just going through the motions. There's a whole, just like Rangers have been for the last month, going through the motions. And Michael Beale got in his car, off he went, and that's the last time I'll ever see him in the flesh, I would imagine, unless he comes back to Ibrox managing another team. Yeah, it's just been really sad. But there was no way I could ever in any way be surprised that he was sacked. But that, since it actually happened, what was it? It was something between 8 and 9 o'clock. I think it was 8:45. I found out on Sunday night. I saw a tweet from Frankie on Jersnet, and I immediately got into Sky Sports News, and it's getting the ticker tape treatment. That's when you know it's real. And also, by the way, for all the calamities our club have been through in the last 10 years, Sky Sports News, the amount of attention they give us, it's an ongoing advert for the club, isn't it? I mean, any manager who's out there who's fancying this, you see the coverage we're getting, he's thinking, that's worth doing, it's worth doing. Do well at Rangers, you're definitely going to know about it. What the footballing world will know about it, especially within Britain, through Sky Sports News, even if it is just down to the fact that they've got nothing better to talk about. They need to fill the programme. But Europe had just won the Ryder Cup, so Michael Beale and Rangers knocked that off the coverage on Sky Sports News. But yeah, that was it. It was official roundabout sometime before 9 o'clock on Sunday night, and not even 48 hours later, it's kind of befuddlement. I'm kind of flabbergasted at how ruthlessly, almost clinically quick Michael Beale got himself sacked, and got me through the point of not blaming him for anything that went wrong last season, maintaining that he actually really improved this when he came in 10 months ago, when he came in November last season, and been quite excited about what he was going to do during the summer, being unsure about what he'd done during the summer when I saw us in pre-season, but not judging him, being kind of a bit worried about what happened the first day of the season at Kilmarnock, and thinking, but that's, if you're going to make massive changes to the club, that's almost acceptable, that's almost explainable by the fact that this whole club is taking a massive intake of breath before we push forward and win everything. You would go down to Kilmarnock and lose 1-0. You would lose to Derek McInnes' side when you're not fully on it yet, when you're preparing to take off. And then we lose in Eindhoven, and and you're thinking, well, that's almost explainable by the fact that the whole support is done with Europe. We know how vital it's been. We've really enjoyed our runs in Europe since Steven Gerrard went to the club, and that's led to us getting a certain level of domestic success. But it's got to the point where, having finally got into the Champions League group stages last season, the ultimate kind of achievable aim, the last achievable aim in our European ambitions, it's taken away from us. It's stopping us winning the league. It's too much of a deep run in quality European competition. So you think, well, maybe the players have picked up on that, and they themselves are so focused on the following game after that doing by PSV, the first Old Firm game of the season, at home to Celtic. They've taken their eye off the ball. Okay, well, we're getting pumped 7-1 and 4-0 in last season's Champions League. To take a 5-1 doing, okay, it's a sore one, but we'll move on from that. And then we lose to Celtic, and that was the first game in September, and by the last game in September, it's confirmed. Michael Beale has to go. It was too early to pull the trigger. That Celtic game was too early to pull the trigger. I think people are maintaining that was the time to do it, and this movie only ends. I've seen this movie before. We know the script here. This film only ends one way. Michael Beale's getting sacked, and that's what's happened. So people will feel they're proved correct by that, but that was still the wrong point at which to be doing it. There was still that possibility that a lot of players hadn't got their fitness yet, hadn't got their bearings yet in Scottish football or within Rangers. And as I say, there was a feeling that maybe the whole club was taking this massive breath before they went deep into pumping everybody and just unleashing the new force that was Michael Beale's own Rangers on Scottish football. We just needed to make sure that it wasn't about that it was just crap. And he was. It turned out that it was just crap. Good luck to the man. A nice guy. He was trying his best, and I hope he does something somewhere else. Clearly, a football guru. I always used to think that Michael Beale, I don't know what to say because it would sound pretty sarcastic, he'd be great on a podcast. He'd be fantastic on a podcast because he was a great talker, or talking about stats and talking about tactics and what have you, but he wasn't convincing as a manager in press conferences, and I always thought that was overstated, even though I did it all the time. It got to the stage where I was backing Michael Beale in my imagination. I was imagining how it could be better and what could possibly have gone wrong that was given this false impression that he should be sacked. But every time he opened his mouth, I was jumping on the Beale must go bus. It was seriously unconvincing. I still maintain that, though, if he'd been winning on the park, we'd have been given it, our manager's crazy, he's local, he's a mad professor. We'd have come up with some reason to justify his behaviour in press conferences, the kind of contradictory statements that he would make, his slightly kooky attitude, his kind of geeky demeanour. That would have been all fine if we're winning on the park. We weren't winning on the park, and of course that then becomes the reason, because that's all we're offered, and we need to be experts. We need to feel some sort of control over this team that we spent so much of our life following without really knowing that much about the mechanics of it. So yeah, away he went, off he goes, and I just feel it happened so brutally quickly. It was almost like a mercy suicide, if you like. That's a terrible thing to say, but you know what I mean, not a mercy killing. It just took it to the point where even somebody like me, somebody who's dead against Rangers in the situation we're in just now since 2012, we're not in that solid financial footing. We might be getting up to the same kind of revenue turnover as Celtic these days, but we haven't had it. We haven't had that steadiness, that kind of settled comfort of financial credibility for long enough to be able to sack managers willy-nilly. We're sacking managers willy-nilly because that's 3 in 2 and a bit years. No, sorry, we didn't sack Steven Gerrard. We didn't sack Steven Gerrard. And that was a great thing. When Steven Gerrard left, it was proof that Rangers were doing really well because he got poached by a club with mega money in Aston Villa in a mega league. Didn't work out for him, particularly after Michael Beale left him to go and try it at QPR. But the fact that we got Giovanni Van Bronckhorst in quite quickly, I was quite impressed by that. I thought the club were doing okay. I didn't think anything that went wrong that season was the fault, particularly of Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. But less than a year later, 10 months after the sacking of Gio, 10 and a bit months after the sacking of Gio, you could see so many of the same things happening. It had got to the point with Michael Beale's team, as it was under Gio's team. It wasn't that players were wanting them sacked. It was that players had got to the point where they physically and mentally could not do it anymore under this manager. They were running through quicksand. Rangers, when they went 2 goals down on Saturday, it was over. And you could see it. They didn't know what they were doing. Even before Scott Wright was sent off, before we went down to 10 men, you could see that the players are being stymied by Michael Beale. They're being undermined by the manager. What's happening in training, what's happening in the dressing room at half-time, and pre-game is holding them back. And they're trying to fight for him. You can see they're actually, in their minds, they're trying. In the front of their brain, they're trying. But their legs are telling the truth. It's like they can't do it. They just can't do it. And that's when you know that it's time to go. It's time for the manager to go. It was just a sad day all round. And Saturday, it's been a sad weekend. But I just come back to this feeling of how unbelievably quickly it's happened. That I've gone from this place of having confidence in Beale, and then knowing things are going wrong, but needing just that bit more evidence before I'm sure it's time to sack him, and being in that situation at all, going from, I can't wait to see what he's going to do, to, I think we need one more bit of evidence before we sack him, and then getting that bit of evidence. He's had a run of 4 games without conceding a goal, and yet he ends it with the one that did. I thought it was going to be the Livingston game in the League Cup. As soon as we went in that international break, as soon as we lost that game to Celtic, Scottish football went on international break. and we had 2 weeks to think about what it was going to take for Michael Beale to retrieve this situation. He's already in the business of retrieving stuff after the loss in the first day to Kilmarnock as well, and the doing by Eindhoven. And I felt as if he had to beat Betis probably to impress us all, and he did that. But it was like the first game was St Johnstone at McDermott. He's going to have to go. They're going to have to not just win, but win well, and we won 2-0. And we scored 2 lovely goals, but one of them was with 5 minutes to go. St Johnstone are bottom of the league at the time. They're terrible way, St Johnstone, right now. And we had the injury to Danilo, and it was just all on the cusp of being good enough and the cusp of being terrible, and it wasn't convincing. And then we go into the game with Betis and we beat them, and that's absolutely fantastic. That's one thing Michael Beale that can't be taken away from him, and I'm happy for him that he's got that, a solid, proper level of European football victory. That's all down to him. His tactics worked and what have you, and the team got better as the game went on. It was a great night, and I'm glad he's got that. I'm glad we've got it, because we'll need those 3 points as we go through this campaign. We need that confidence. And then we had the game against Motherwell where we win 1-0 and the team gets booed off the park, the following Sunday. So it's like he couldn't react well enough to a major defeat. There was 2 weeks to think about that defeat to Celtic, and they didn't come out all guns blazing after it. They then have a fantastic victory against the team wearing the original Celtic strip, Real Betis, at home in Europe, and they can't react well to that either. They can't react well to taking the lead in a match. They can't react well to going behind in a match. They can't react to anything. This was the idea that Michael Beale was reactive rather than proactive, was kind of blown out the water by that, and in a really bad way. We did see a style. We did see. And it's something I've noticed, something I've realised over the past couple of days with all the time I'm spending on social media and watching podcasts and, contributing my own nonsense to all that, is I think a lot of people out there, or maybe it's me, it's confused. I always thought when people were insisting on Michael Beale not having a recognisable style, I think some people meant that his Rangers team doesn't have style. It doesn't have Milan, panache. No, I was just thought they meant a style. There wasn't a recognisable formation or strategy, or tactic that he was using. They weren't playing in a recognisable shape. And I always thought, well, that's nonsense, because Gio's Rangers played in a totally recognisable shape, the horseshoe, and it was brutal, and it eventually got him sacked. And I think Michael Beale was all about flexibility, but I think he was almost too flexible. He was too interested in what the opposition were doing and reacting to that. And I think he was such a tactical guru that he's probably granted his players too much credibility. He's given them too much respect, almost thinking that they can do the same thing, they can change within games, and maybe they should be able to. And I had this theory going on. I watched how we played against St Johnstone in that game. I thought maybe he's getting these Dutch players in, Sam Lammers, and I know that everybody in the Netherlands is ridiculously good when it comes to languages, but I know Cyril Dessers is a Nigerian international, but players who are really articulate, really good speaking in English, and just bringing out their basic intelligence, showing that basically they are really intellectual players when they're in these kind of post-match interviews or pre-match interviews. I think maybe he's just when he's looking these players in the eyes, it's to find out that they're actually really clever, and they're clever enough to be able to adapt to his systems that he's going to constantly be changing in game and from game to game. And that was another case of me just fantasising, but maybe I thought perhaps it would be better when we've got so many new players, 9 new players coming in over the summer, and signed early when we were wanting them. And like Gio, he's ended up, the end days for Gio were worsened by the fact that he had no defence. His defence was completely gone. Connor Golson was injured, and we're having to play, Leon King and James Sands and what have you in defence at that point. And I think with Michael Beale, it's become the attack in the midfield, the areas of the park that he was focusing his spending sprees on, and he was slaughtered by a lot of the fans for only not doing anything with the defence other than changing the goalkeeper. And that's something that we've got to give him credit for, because Jack Butland's been a fantastic signing, as were Cantwell and Raskin, who he also signed. So his signing policy isn't as bad as has been made out, and it turned out that we needed all those midfielders and attackers because they've all been getting crocked. But I felt as maybe he could have done with a few, maybe a month, the first couple of months that I've ended up doing from this season, he might have been as well to just go with a fixed system and let the players all get to know each other before he started rotating and trying to change things at half time and, putting left wingers on the right wing and putting centre halves on in place of attacking midfielders and stuff like that. So I don't know. I'm just guessing, like everybody else. We're just guessing at what actually went wrong and what was really going through Michael Beale's head, because I think a lot of the time when he spoke so much, he was actually hiding so much as well. He was hiding behind his own words a lot of times. But yeah, no more. He's off skate, and I'm just, as I say, it's the fact it happened so quickly. There's now no doubt in my mind he just almost did it ruthlessly. That little run of 4 games at Ibrox on the trot, I thought one of these is going to be the landmine that gets him, and of course he just got to the point. He just got to the point where he thought he's only got one more. He's won the 3 of them. Add the St Johnstone game, the first game back after the international break, and he's won 4 in the trot, and he was always very keen to tell us, him and Neil Banfield were too keen to tell us about the clean sheets and those little microaggressions. That's a redundancy, tautology if you like, but the microaggressions try to tell the fans that statistically we're actually really good here. We've had more shots on, or we have conceded less shots on target than anybody else. We've got these clean sheets, but it's like, yeah, but we'd lost 2 of our first 6 league games. We had a couple of games where we hadn't scored at all, and that was enough to beat us. Teams we weren't even getting a 0-0 draw with anybody. They were beating us if we didn't score. And there was kind of having a slight go at the fans for booing players and what have you. I understand that it's a bit out of order, but when you start getting the idea that the management team's a bit pissed off with the fans rather than the players, and it's trying to tell us to limit our ambition almost, that's what it did for I remember Mark Warburton doing that just before he went out the door as well. So it was time for Michael Beale to go. But yeah, I feel as if it just got to the point where we beat Livingston in the League Cup, and that was a weird one. When we won 4-0 against Livy, I couldn't find any way to justify why it was bad, because we've won 4-0 against a team from our own division in the League Cup quarter-final, and we'd beaten them 4-0 in the league as well. But with both those games, it turned into Michael Beale's biggest victories. There was something missing. And it was the space between the first goal and the second goal. The amount of time it took us to get that second goal, and obviously Livingston are terrible this season as well. They're in a really bad way this season. And it felt like, yeah, he's won 4 games in a row, and now he's winning 4-0. Is it okay? Is it going to be all right? He still had to make sure he was going to take it through to the next international break, St Mirren next Sunday, without any slip-ups, to guarantee he was going to be in the job. But I thought maybe he is on the cusp of turning this around, and then Aberdeen turn up, and we played really well for that first half hour. But then you slowly realise we're not playing well. The same thing has happened with the Livy game, where we're 1-0 up and we're flipping the ball about, quite easy possession, thinking this is good, but then why am I starting to fall asleep? And the same thing was happening against Aberdeen, except this time we didn't even have the lead, and Aberdeen had more about them. Despite being below Livingston in the league when the game started, Aberdeen had more about them. And that was that. Before October has started, Michael Beale had proven that he wasn't the man. I'm not trying to turn that into, I know a lot of fans are saying, well, this is actually great because we're still in 4 competitions, and it's not even October. We're not even into the October fixtures yet, and we've got rid of the manager. So there's a chance here we can still win the treble. I don't think that's going to happen somehow. I don't know if you've been watching the Rugby World Cup. I haven't seen a lot of it this time. I've been too focused on the traumas of Rangers right now. But I noticed, was it maybe Friday night? I was just flicking through the channels. I saw the All Blacks were destroying Italy. And I think they ended up scoring 90 odd points, the All Blacks. And there's only 80 minutes in a rugby match. And I remember looking at the clock and thinking, the All Blacks are scoring more points than there is time on the board, on the clock. And then Scotland were doing the same against Romania. I think it was on Saturday night. I'm like, it's like 78 minutes and they've got 79 points or something like that. And we are now losing a point to Celtic in the league race with every game that's played. We've played 7 league games this season. We're 7 points behind them. We've played 7 league games this season. We've lost 3 of them. That's it. The manager has got to go. But I think that's there's still problems at Parkhead. The Celtic fans are not. There's a large contingent, Bromley or otherwise, at Parkhead that wants to turn on Brendan Rodgers at the first possible opportunity. Maybe we can exploit that. But I was saying this last season about Ange Postecoglou, so maybe I thought he was ready to crack at some point. He seemed really touchy, and if we could just get under his skin once, he would eventually. He just took the treble and he went down to England, and he's setting the heather on fire down there as well. So I'm not going to start predicting how Celtic are going to collapse and how we can claw this back. I'm just going to fall into the warm embrace of Steve Davis taking over Rangers and that little presser he did yesterday. I know it's an in-house presser on Rangers TV, but it was like everything that Michael Beale's press conferences weren't. It was quiet. It was assured. It was emanating a confidence that comes from the experience of winning and knowing how to do it. And it was just grounded as well, grounded in reality. And it was like when I used to, go and cuddle my gran. You knew she wasn't here for the long term, but you knew she loved you unconditionally. You loved her unconditionally. And whatever life threw at you, everyone was going to be all right. So that's what it's like as a Rangers fan. Eventually, we will get there, and it's just nice that Steve Davis is our Granny Davis is taking over in the interim until we sort out who we're going to get long term. But that's a conversation for another silly pod from me. I hope you're feeling okay, folks. It's been a terrible time, and I feel bad for Michael Beale. All the best to him. But it was definitely time to move on. And yeah, let's try and get this season restarted. See you later, folks.